We are Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph 37a, middle of the page. We get to location of the tefillin on the arm and on the head. The two discussions are a bit intertwined in that they are derived one from the other, as we'll see in a moment. But we're going to start with the hand and then the head. So the Gemara is going to begin with the...
Where are they? They're not here?
Not today. The Gemara is going to begin with... No, not today. Okay, so the Gemara is going to begin with the location of the tefillin on the hand. We confirmed that it belongs in the left hand with all the discussions of a lefty and ambidextrous and the rest of it. Now, where on the hand is it located? Where on the arm? And where on the head is it located? And the two discussions are intertwined. As we'll see in a moment, they're derived one from the other. But primarily the first discussion is going to be on the arm with a bit of a detour for a minute. And then we're going to come back to the question of the head. So let's begin. Tana debei Menachot. That's the line begins with the word Tana debei Menachot. It's about a little less than halfway up from the bottom of the page. Yeah. So Tana debei Menachot. It was taught in the study house of Menachot. Al Yatra, the verse reads, place it on your hand. Zu kibodes, this is, I'm not even sure if this is the bicep itself, just under the bicep. We'll define that exactly as we go along, but let's just for now call it the bicep, but it's not exactly that.
If you don't have biceps?
Sorry?
If you don't have biceps, what's happened?
We discussed that yesterday already. What happens to someone who has an amputee? We talked about that.
Okay.
Someone who, God forbid, is missing an arm. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, what part is part of the arm?
Okay.
It's all discussed. We'll go through the left hand. It's a whole discussion.
We went through that. We went through some of that yesterday about the hand. Someone missing hand. If it's the right hand, left hand, all the rest.
Different opinions and so on.
Where is the best place then
Yeah.
as a result of that place?
Okay, but now we're talking about someone who's a healthy individual.
Some people are exempt if they don't have it.
Yeah, as we talked about. Today we're talking about someone who's healthy, has all of his limbs, just where on the hand. So here we say kibodes, it's on, let's just call it the bicep for now, but it's not exactly the bicep, and we'll determine exactly where that's located as we progress. And beinei nacha, the verse says it's got to be between your eyes. Zu kadkod, this is the crown of the head, the skull of the head. It's up here. So heicha, where on the skull, where on the crown of the head? Amri debei Rabbi Yanai, it was said in the study house of Rabbi Yanai, Makom, the play at the location shemoiche shel tinuk reifes, where the mind, the brain of the child is soft when he's born. So when the baby's born, right, there's a soft spot right just about here, which is where the three plates of the skull meet, connect, right after they kind of during childbirth they kind of mesh so that they can get through the birthing canal, and then once the baby comes out, they slowly start to shape and fall into place. But there's a little, where they meet, there's a little soft spot there. So just under there, that's the location where it goes on the head. So you want to know exactly where head tefillin go. We'll talk more about this later, but between that soft spot, which you can still feel a bit of an indent there, in front of that, and between that and the hairline, as we'll learn later. Okay. So now a little digression on the discussion of the head tefillin, and then it's going to come back to the actual location of the hand tefillin. This is quite an interesting discussion. Palimo, a fellow, asked innocent question of Rabbi, and he asked, someone who has two heads, which one of the two heads we put a tefillin on?
Two heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, Siamese twin.
Siamese twin.
Yeah,
it exists.
Yeah.
Amar lei, so Rabbi said to him. Rabbi said to him in exclamation at the what he perceived as absurdity of the question, and said, "Oy kum gali," for the ridiculousness of this question. Either exile yourself, or accept communication, the excommunication. This is a ridiculous question. Don't waste my time. So what Rabbi told him? I'm translating literally. I'm sure there's deeper meanings here, but that's the literally. Adahachi, in the meantime, Asahu Gavra, a certain fellow arrived to ask a question of Rabbi, and Amalei And he said to Rabbi, Isyalli lo yunka, my wife gave birth to a firstborn son, but the Isle Tereshi, he has two heads, Siamese twins apparently. And therefore he asked, how much money do I have to give to the kohen in redemption? Right, we celebrated here our Pidyon Haben, the first child has to be redeemed. Redeemed because initially the firstborn were to be kohenim, were to be the ones who served in the temple, not by any specific family, but any family that had a firstborn son would have served in the temple. That was the initial plan. And then with the sin of the golden calf, things changed, and God granted that privilege to the descendants of Aaron. So, because of that, a person who gives birth, a Yisrael, an Israelite who gives birth to a firstborn child, under the right conditions, has to redeem that child from the kohen, because he initially officially belongs to the priesthood. It's a very rare mitzvah, because there has to be firstborn. Both mother and father have to be Israelites, not no Levi or no Kohen. Good morning. And it has to be born of a natural birth. Can't be any
Caesarean.
Can't be a cesarean. There can't be any miscarriages before. So it's a rare mitzvah. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate enough to do that mitzvah myself for my oldest son. It was a beautiful thing. At any rate, so now he's asking. He has Siamese twins. How much does he give? Now, if it's actual twins, twins that are born, as Ashi points out for us, you'd only give. Okay, so the amount you're supposed to pay for this redemption is 5 sloyim, which is a certain amount of silver. I don't remember exact number, 100 and something gram. At any rate, so when you have twins, it's not possible for both children to emerge from the birthing canal exactly the same moment. One's going to be before the other, right? And therefore, you only pay for one of them. Presumably, you would know which one's the older one. But when it comes to Siamese twins, this issue here, he's asking Rabbi, how much should I pay? Because perhaps they did both emerge at the same time. I don't know how Siamese twins are born, but I guess there is the possibility, at least, of both of these children, or with this one child with two heads, to emerge from the womb at the same time. And therefore, he's asking, how much do I pay? Because the verse says you got to pay for each golgolas, for each skull. That's the way the verse refers to the child born. Bekala, you're redeeming his skull. So here 2 skulls emerge. Maybe I have to pay more. Or is it one person and therefore only pay less? So this is what he's asking Rabbi.
If they pay 2 more, they give them different names for both heads.
I don't know.
It's a very serious operation now.
It's a very serious
question.
Yeah, they've done it successfully.
2 heads. One Shimon, another one.
It's 2 different people. They're 2 different people.
2 different names, yeah.
They are 2 different people.
Yeah,
I don't know how they viewed it in times of the Gemara, whether they viewed it as 1 person, 2 people. But as we'll see in a moment, it doesn't seem like it was a very high survival rate in the Gemara's time. Today we do have better medicine, and there is survival rate, and I believe they even have an operation to separate the 2. It also depends on it. It's very challenging. It also depends on at where the split is and which limbs they share. It's not so. Do they share which organs? Do they share a liver? Do they share lungs? Do they share a heart? It's very complicated.
Transplants and so on.
It's not a simple matter, but I suppose it would be clear that in Talmudic times, that this modern medicine, there wasn't a high survival rate, which comes into play for the question, as we'll see. So in the meantime, anyway, the point is that this individual Pnima asked Rabbi which head wears Tefillin if there's 2 heads, and Rabbi laughed it off, and yet right then, by divine providence, a fellow walks in and says, my wife just gave birth to a firstborn son with 2 heads, and how much do I pay for the Pidyon Haben, for the redemption of the firstborn? So obviously he never did know the answer. He didn't even know this thing existed. So Asa Hu Saba, so there was an elder who was there and said, maybe he had heard from earlier generations, Tanale, and he said as follows: it was taught to him, or he taught them, Chayav Litanloi Yutzloyim, you have to give 10, 5 for each of the 2 heads. So the Gemara asks, Eini, which would mean 2 tefillin, right? So the Gemara asks, Eini, is that the case? Vatani Rami Bar Chama, but Rami Bar Chama taught. The verse says with respect to the mitzvah of redeeming the firstborn, Pada Tiftes Abachar, you shall redeem your firstborn. Adam, your firstborn son. Shemeani, so I would derive from there, Afilo Nitraf B'Seich Lamed, even if the child wouldn't survive past 30 days. in halacha, a child before 30 days is still in doubt as to whether or not it's going to survive, which is why the redemption of the firstborn happens on day 31 actually, because they're not sure if it's going to survive at all. Today, obviously, we have a much higher survival rate, but back then, all kinds of things that they didn't even, today, within an hour of the child's birth, you can tell, or even before the child's born, it has this issue, you give it that medicine, this issue, that medicine. But today, without modern medicine, you couldn't see any of that, and until 30 days, it was in doubt situation. So, when the verse unqualified says redeem the firstborn, one might assume, it doesn't matter if the child's going to survive or not, you have to redeem it. And therefore, Talmud Leimar.
During the first week, you have to redeem it?
So let's learn. That's what we're learning. That's what we're learning. So the Gemara is saying, at the moment, if the verse said, redeem your firstborn, and that was it, I might have understood it to mean that even within 30 days, even if it dies within 30 days, you still have to redeem it because the verse says to redeem the firstborn. But Talmud Leimar, therefore the verse adds a word, and adding that word tells us no. The verse says, but you shall redeem the firstborn, or yet. So when you say when you say but or yet, what you're saying is you're making an exclusion. So when you're excluding something, what you're saying is there are some firstborns that are redeemed and some that are not. And which ones are not? The ones who don't survive 30 days. And therefore, Pidyon Haben only happens on day 31. So this is where we know it from. We know that it's only a surviving child because the verse says, excluding certain children. Which children are we excluding? The ones who cannot survive. And therefore, says the Gemara, why is the Gemara raising this? The Gemara is saying, why is this elder saying that he had heard that a child born with 2 heads should pay, the father pays double for redemption, 10 Slayim, 5 for each. When seemingly a Siamese twin, this child born with 2 heads, has a very little to none, certainly in Talmudic times, no chance of surviving. So why are we even telling them to do any redemption? It's not going to survive. And here the verse is saying that if it doesn't survive past 30 days, no redemption. Pidyon Haben only happens if it can survive 30 days. And the assumption is, for such a child, it's not going to survive past 30 days. And therefore, why any redemption at all? The Gemara says, no. Shiny Hacha, the situation here is different. Typical goylus, talarachmana. The Torah says it's to be paid for against the skull. So even if the child has a very low chance of survival, but I guess if it goes past 30 days, even if it's not going to make it to 50 days or to a year, but you still have surviving skulls, literally. The verse says, you should pay for the skull, and you have 2 skulls here, and therefore 10. Okay, so this was a little divergent discussion, right? Because the Gemara opened up with a discussion on where the tefillin belongs in the hand, bicep, head, just below the soft spot of the head, where the baby has a soft spot. The Gemara went in a little divergent discussion with a Siamese twin, and which took us to redemption of the firstborn. But now the Gemara comes back to location of tefillin first on the arm, and then location of tefillin on the head for tomorrow, God willing.
That's why Rabbi was upset, because for a Pidyon Haben, the last 3 days is possible, but to reach bar mitzvah for tefillin, said that's unlikely. That's why the question is.
So even if, in other words, this issue of Pidyon Haben is not a contradiction to Rabbi's shock or dismissal, because surviving past 30 days is possible, but the 13 years is very unlikely, and therefore he dismissed that even if you knew of the concept of a Siamese twin. But from the Gemara's way of putting the story out, as if the arrival of this child was a kind of divine response to Rabbi, so it almost seems like Rabbi was wrong in being so dismissive. Perhaps. Anyway, you can read it both ways.
Maybe the reader should get the impression that there's no possibility. There is a possibility.
There is a possibility.
Pidyon Haben, yes, but tefillin could be different.
Yeah. It doesn't. It's adahachi, as in like in the meantime, as if it's almost like in response to your shock.
Yeah, because
but anyway,
you dismiss the whole question completely. No, there's a question, at least for Pidyon Haben. But for tefillin could be no question.
Anyway, today we know that they're 2 individual people. Today we understand that they're 2 individual people, and this is what the Gemara seems to imply, that they're 2 people, which is why two skulls, 2 people, and therefore they would have 2 head tefillin. I'm curious as to, I just thought of this now as we're reading this, if they share a upper body, it means they each share hands. So they have two head tefillin, clearly,
That's right.
but they only have one hand tefillin that they would share.
That's right.
Side, yeah, if they have they share, if there's
They generally have-
attached here.
Right?
Body to
So they
body.
only share, they share one hand. They share two hands.
I think. Well, I mean, they're all different.
Yeah?
In general, I think Siamese twins they each have their own set of arms.
I don't- I'm
Usually
not-
they're attached by the torso. They each
Oh,
have their own
below
legs.
below the arm? I thought they just had like by the shoulder.
It could be.
It could be any type.
anywhere,
But let's just assume, for argument's sake, that they only
But they
have
usually-
one set of arm that they share.
I
I wonder who would make the bracha.
I think
maybe the
they
one who has
generally-
control?
Pictures I've seen, I think, like from what in my head, they all have their own set of arms.
Yeah, I'm
Two
not.
heads?
I'm not remembering that.
Not-
Let's just do hypothetical. Let's just say you're right. But hypothetically speaking, if they only had one set of arm,
Right.
so both arms are involved in the act of putting on tefillin.
If they have-
Let's just say the head on the right side controls the right hand,
Right.
and the head on the left side controls the left hand. But the tefillin is going onto the left hand, so it's going on to the left person. But who's tying it? The hand on the right. So they're both equally involved in the act of the mitzvah, right? So I wonder who makes the bracha. Or they both do the bracha together. I would assume that they each make their own independent bracha on the head tefillin, because that's the only time that they're actually doing a separate mitzvah. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm literally just guessing as we're going along. I don't know, but it's quite an interesting anomaly.
If they have both hands weak, they can use two.
We talked about that yesterday also. If they have both hands weak, then you do the left hand anyway. But that's also we discussed yesterday. Meaning, however you define which tefillin they would put it on, if they're both equally as strong, you still put it on the left hand. If they're both equally as weak, you put it on the left hand, right? At any
The
rate,
whole question of phantom limbs on top of it all. People who feel a phantom limb.
Yeah.
In any case, because they do have a limb, but it develops later on. Sometimes they put an arm, they put an extra.
right. In other words, their nervous system has the capacity for an extra arm, but they don't actually physically have the arm.
Exactly.
And then when they put a prosthetic,
Prosthetic arm. Afterwards.
yeah, I wonder, because I mentioned, we talked about this off camera before, but the verse is al yadecha, on your hand.
Yeah.
Prosthetic, I don't know if that qualifies as your hand.
Although they have a stump there already, so stump can.
Right. So then that would get back to the question we said yesterday: if someone who only has
Well,
a,
they feel also, but they have a feeling if you put it up.
so if someone has their upper arm,
Yeah.
that was the discussion we had yesterday. Do they put it on the upper arm here? Do they put it on the right arm, or are they exempt completely? I would imagine you put it on without a bracha.
So
That was the halacha mentioned yesterday.
They would have to ask it according to what the person actually has.
Yeah.
In detail.
And I imagine the general rule is put it on without a bracha. Or let's say someone who has two prosthetic arms.
Right.
I don't think they're required to wear tefillin, but if they came to me, I tell them, don't put it on. Put it on. Don't make a bracha. There's no sin in putting it on. So I that's just my hunch.
And you're so right, because it would make them feel as if they're part of.
Part of the community. Yeah. Maybe they can't make a bracha, but they can make a bracha on their head tefillin still, for sure.
Exactly.
Right. At any rate. Okay. So now we're going back to locating.
That's what you say, because there's a very large number. We had a case that actually came to court. All the children with thalidomide who are using their legs for everything. And I was wondering what they would do with a child, for example, a Jewish child. I was amazed. I had a meeting actually. There was one young lady who was absolutely remarkable, wearing pants, of course.
Yeah.
And she wrote with her
feet.
With her legs.
Do they have any growth here, or it's all the way to the shoulder?
Really up to the shoulder. And
Then they'd be exempt if they- yeah.
The thalidomide children, but it was absolutely amazing, and she was
That is
so
pretty
articulate.
that's pretty remarkable.
And as soon as we got used to the idea of the way she was sitting and so on, she was taking notes. She was
That's
so
quite
articulate.
remarkable.
It's absolutely remarkable.
I've seen actually
Okay.
in the States a woman who has no arms at all, just legs and a torso and other. She actually has children, and she's able to change diapers with her feet.
It's quite remarkable. Yeah.
Whatever we can do with our hands, she does with her feet.
So it actually makes it. When you're missing one item, the other ones become things. Okay. So let's move forward here to exact location. Yeah. Let's go to the exact location of where on the arm the tefillin belong. So let's see. Amar Mar, it was taught to us earlier. Yotcha. And when the verse says to put it on your hand, Zuki Boides, this is what we call the bicep, but it's not exactly the bicep, as we shall presently identify. The Tanur Rabbanan of our sages taught some Mishnaic age text which predates the original statement. And it says, the verse reads, Al Yadecha, on your hand. Zu goyve shebiyad, this is at the height of your hand. Because the verse says, on top of your hand. Al Yadecha. So not like on your hand, but atop your hand. and thus goes somewhere higher.
Above.
Yeah. So At Omer, you are reading it, says the Gemara in rhetorical question. Zugoyve Shabiyad, that it's referring to atop the hand, somewhere above the hand. Maybe it means on the hand. Why are you translating it on top of the hand? Why not, or above the hand? Why not on the hand? Amra Torah, maybe that's what Torah means. So literally put it on the palm, on your hand. So the Gemara says no. I'm sorry, Amra Torah, the Torah says, Hanach Tefillin biyad, put the tefillin on your hand, V'hanach Tefillin b'rosh, and put the tefillin on your head. Just as it is with the head tefillin, it means on top of your head, at the height of your head, up here as we identified earlier. Avkan b'goyve shebiyad, so too with respect to the hand, it goes on top. So we're comparing the hand and the head tefillin. Head tefillin goes on top, yeah, hand tefillin goes on top. We'll identify later where we know from the verse, from scripture itself, that the head tefillin belongs at the top there and not between your eyes. But for now, let's just accept that the head tefillin belongs on top of the head, and therefore we're comparing the hand and the head, so hand goes on top of the head, so the hand tefillin goes on top of the hand. Okay, now how high up? So we know now it's above the hand, but how high? And here's the next couple of lines, the next two statements. And we'll see a little distinction in why we need both of them, and why one is an halacha. Rabbi Lezer says, you don't need the comparison between the hand and the head tefillin. The hand tefillin itself, the verse, the scripture, which describes putting on the hand tefillin, itself indicates that it belongs higher up on the hand. How's that? Because where the verse reads, it should be for you a sign. For you it's a sign. Not for others it's a sign. Okay. So when it comes to the head tefillin, we mentioned earlier, the verse reads that the nations of the world will see that the name of God is upon you, and they will fear you, and therefore the head tefillin are to be exposed. In fact, it's mentioned in the Alter B'Shulchan Aruch that one should be careful not to cover their head tefillin, if they put a talus over your head, not to cover your head tefillin completely, because it should be exposed. But when it comes to the head tefillin, it says it should be for you a sign.
The hand tefillin.
Sorry, when it comes to the hand tefillin, it says it should be for you a sign. So Belezer therefore derives that the sign of the hand tefillin is exclusively yours, nobody else's. And thus, your hand tefillin should be located somewhere where it's hidden, not seen. If it were on the palm of your hand, that would be exposed. So it's got to be somewhere where it's concealed, and therefore it's higher up, which is ordinarily concealed, as I shall explain. Rabbi Yitzchak says, you don't need that either. There's another verse which clearly indicates that it should be higher up. The verse reads, and you shall place these words al levavchem upon your hearts. And then it goes on to read, you shall bind it on your hand. So these two things coming together, the word should be on your hearts, which is a metaphorical thing, that you should hearken to these words. And then the literal verse which says, tie it on your hands, but the Gemara is comparing the two. And if we say, that the tefillin should be opposite the heart, at the height of the heart. And this gives you the most precise location of where tefillin should be. Namely, as we'll see in a moment, above the elbow, below the bicep. So if you're taking the arm between your elbow and your shoulder, halfway between the lower half. As we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch in a moment. But I want to show you something interesting on the right hand side, the Shita Mikubetzes. I kind of alluded to it, but here it is clearly. Aleph, the first one there. The small, tiny little margin all the way on the right. Below the fancy looking break. So, L'chala Ois, we said it should be for you a sign. This was Rabbi Lezer's. This is how Rabbi Lezer came to the conclusion that tefillin should be higher up, because the verse says it should be for you a sign, and not a sign for others, right? And therefore it should be a place which is concealed. The Gemara says umapik yad mamish, so that excludes literally the hand, the palm, which is completely not concealed. It's always revealed, right? My hands are always exposed. Unless you're wearing gloves, but generally speaking, your hands are open. But says the Shita Mikubetzes, we still don't know from this verse if it's on the arm higher than the elbow or below the elbow, which is also concealed but begotten with closing. So if I only had Rabbi Lezer's verse which said that your tefillin should be in a place that's hidden, maybe I put it down here on the forearm. That's why I'm saying kibodes doesn't literally mean bicep. It seems like kibodes just means arm as a whole. So If the issue is only concealing, then you can put the tefillin down here. So long as it's like above your wrist, then it's usually concealed. Put it there. So I don't know that it goes all the way up there. And therefore, therefore we rely on Rabbi Yitzchak's verse, who said that the tefillin should be directly opposite the heart. And here you have a precise location on the arm. That's how we come to this conclusion. Let's continue the Gemara. Let's conclude this Gemara before we go to the Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara continues. Rab Chia v'Rab Acha b'nei Rav Avia. I think that's to pronounce the name. Rab Chia and Rav Acha, son of Rav Avia. They would be precise, very precise, of putting their tefillin opposite their hearts. Meaning to say, don't derive from Rabbi Yitzchak's words that you put it on your opposite your heart anywhere above your elbow. They were precise to put it exactly on the place on the hand, on the arm, which was exactly opposite, horizontally speaking, in the height of the heart. The Gemara concludes this discussion. Rav Ashi Yosef committed a Meimar. Rav Ashi was sitting in the presence of a Meimar. Havet Sidi biyadei. He was looking at his hand, or there was the Kamaschazin Tefillin. He saw a hole in the sleeve of Sidi biyadei. He saw a hole in the sleeve of a Meimar, and he can see in that hole the Tefillin were there. So Amalei. So Rav Ashi said to Ameimar, are you not of the view that the tefillin should be a sign for you, and not for others a sign? Meaning to say, you made a hole cut out in your arm, in your sleeve, and now the tefillin are exposed. Didn't Rabbi Lezer say that it should be concealed? So it seems to me the Gemara is combining two things for halacha. Number one, the location on the forearm we derive from the fact that it's got to be opposite the heart. But here Rav Ashi is saying, don't you say your hand tefillin has to be concealed? Assuming that in addition to the location, it should actually be covered with a sleeve. And yet you have a cutout in your sleeve making it exposed.
Yeah, reason because he had a wound there.
Sorry?
He had a wound, that's why he had to do that.
He had a wound.
Yes, he wanted the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so he had a reason for that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, even so, Amalei, Amema responded, the makim l'chala'os. It doesn't mean that it has to be concealed, but it should be located on the arm that's ordinarily concealed. So Amema is saying there's actually no practical application to the statement of Rabbi Yitzchak that the tefillin should be concealed, other than it's in a location which is usually concealed, which, as we mentioned earlier, could be anywhere on the arm. And we primarily derive the location from the fact that it has to be opposite the heart. But nonetheless, there is the custom. I was trying to look for the source for it, but I couldn't find the actual quote in the text, but this is what I was taught when I became bar mitzvah, that there is this custom that the tefillin on the hand should be concealed. So I've seen many who actually put their sleeve over their tefillin. If you're married and Chabad and you're married, wear a talis, then the talis strap covers it. And even this is why I remember it, because before I get married, Chabad doesn't wear a talis. So the jacket, we were taught to take a jacket and put it over the shoulder, so that it's somewhat covering the hand tefillin, as opposed to the head tefillin, which is supposed to be exposed. So the fact that the head tefillin is supposed to be exposed, that's in the Alter Shulchan Aruch. But as far as the hand being covered, I don't know where it come from, but this is the oral tradition, if you will, that I've been taught when I became bar mitzvah. And we'll conclude with the halacha here. The second page here, go to text number 2, and we read it in English. We'll see the exact location. Second page there. Oh, you're looking at
28 or 27?
27 should be, sorry. 27. Not 28, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so somewhere,
Somewhere 27, somewhere 28. We're looking at section 27.
Yeah, okay, good.
Chav Zayin, Simon Chav Zayin, Halacha Beis. The arm tefillin should be placed on the prominent part of the upper arm between the elbow and the shoulder, i.e., on the biceps. It should not be placed above the biceps, i.e., it should not be placed higher than halfway between the elbow and the shoulder. Cannot be there. Lower half of the bicep means from the elbow to the shoulder, halfway and downward. Now, even on the lower half of the upper arm, so this half above the elbow to halfway, one should not place the tefillin very low below the biceps. This is alluded to by the verse, and you shall place these words of mine upon your heart, i.e., the arm tefillin must be placed opposite the heart. This is from our Gemara. Namely, on the bicep, which is directly opposite the heart. So if you put it too low, too close to the elbow, it's below the heart. If you put it above halfway, it's above the heart. So it's got to be just, in other words, it's just below the halfway mark of halfway between your elbow and shoulder. For this reason, the arm tefillin should be turned slightly towards the body, so that when the arm is inclined downward, the arm tefillin will be directly opposite one's heart. Meaning, it should not be out here or out here, but towards the body. It should be facing this way. So your hand is down, the tefillin are pointing directly to your heart. And you can see here the precision with which that should be. Coming from these words, it should be opposite the heart. Mamish b'chuvin, like the story with Rav Chia and Rav Acha, who machaven, they would make it, they'd be very precise in making sure it's directly opposite the heart. Namely, just below the halfway line between elbow and shoulder. So now we have the exact precise location of the arm tefillin, and God willing tomorrow the exact location of the tefillin on the head. Actually tomorrow